Right then, I'm just getting myself ready, getting my kit together. I'm on my way across to Sheffield to meet up with a long-time friend and ex-colleague, little Steve Brooks. Some of you may know him if you're local in the area. I've worked with him in the trade for many years, and he's currently working at a motorcycle dealership in Sheffield. And we decided to get together and have a chat about the state of the motorcycle retail trade in the UK as it is today, and maybe come up with some ideas as to what needs to be done to ensure that the industry has got a future in this country. So just going to get my kit together and get in the car and get ourselves off to Sheffield. So let's get on the way. Let's just double check I've got everything. So I've got my notebook, spare batteries for the GoPro, my remote mics, Insta360 selfie stick, and my flexible mount for the GoPro in case I need something just to clip on. Don't know what we're going to see when we get what we're going to be doing at the other end. So that might come in useful. Put these all in the bag, get in the car, and we'll get on our way. Right. See you on the flip side. Let's get this show on the road. So here we are, we've just turned up at Manhattan. Obviously some happy customers. And we're going to nip inside and have a word with Steve. So, but yeah, this is where he works these days, Manhattan in Sheffield. And as if by magic, here he is. Okay. Well, I'd like to start by once again thanking Steve for giving up his time to have this conversation, to give his take from the other side of the desk, if you like, on where we are with the motorcycle industry in the UK today, as a bit of a follow-up from my NEC video, which got quite a few comments, shall we say. So, but I think we'll start. I know Steve very well. We've been friends for a long time and colleagues in the past. But I'd like to start by asking Steve to briefly introduce himself and give us a little bit of background on his motorcycling heritage, shall we say. So, over to you, Steve. Okay, so you started riding in '79 then, Steve?
Yeah, on a Fizzy, and then CG125, which was, I bought off for 250 quid off my mum and dad. They got it free with the Datsun Sunny Estate. We could have a video recorder, a microwave, or a CG125. My brother had it for a year, gave it him back. He didn't want to pay 300 quid. I did buy it for 250. And then I sold it, a part X at DC Cooks in Galthorpe, where my brother worked, for a RS250 Honda. Then I went 400 Ford, GPZ 550, got my dream bike, my Ducati Panther. So I just went up bit by bit. My dad retired in '88, Bramley Post Office in Rotherham, and I could have had the post office, but I didn't really want to do that. I had a bit of a Saturday trial in Carnell in Doncaster, and then started working there in '87, and worked there till '93. Obviously, worked with you.
Yep.
It was, made me who I am today.
The man that you are.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm not called a man very often, but there you are. And then I went on the road. I got a job as a sales rep for a motorcycle wholesaler. I went down for an interview at NEC '92, late '92. When there was a big crowds there then, and I was told I was one of 80 applicants. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. And then was on the road from '93, working for 2 or 3 companies, covering all of the northwest and northeastern borders. And then came off the road, basically when our company was bought. As you probably know, in the wholesale trade, there's been a lot of acquisitions.
Yeah.
We think it's to do with Brexit. We think that these companies on the mainland Europe are stationing themselves here.
Yeah.
And we think that's why. They don't say that, but there's been too much of it. Not a coincidence. But so anyway, yeah. So Paul needed Royal Enfield brand as it was growing, developing. He'd been here 7 years as a franchise. The shop's been here 50, 60 years, as you know. And so basically, yeah, I've sort of took this on and I've tidied it up a little bit. Paul's painted it. We had new lighting, and we basically Royal Enfield sort of 100% almost now, but we still take part X's in. So yeah, that's me.
So you've seen it all. You've.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, when you're working in it, it's hard to look out your window. But yeah, we've seen it from the big times and how busy it was.
Going back to when you first started motorcycling, I mean, the South Yorkshire itself had dozens, if not hundreds, of motorcycle shops, and you'll probably remember back in those days,
Yeah.
you know, South Yorkshire, like 4 big cities, towns: Barnsley, Doncaster, Rotherham, Sheffield.
Yeah.
Each one of them had 3 or 4
Yeah.
multi-franchise or Solus franchise Japanese dealerships. We had Harley dealerships. We had Italian brands being sold back in those days. You remember those days?
Yeah, I mean, I only really say remember Rotherham and Sheffield because that's, you know, your world's quite small then. You don't think it is, but, you know, I remember there were 3 franchise dealers in Rotherham. Avon Hans, Honda, Ernest Cross Yamaha, Southgrove Kawasaki up the road. So within 400 yards, you got 3 Japanese franchise dealers. Yeah. I'm sure Suzuki was around somewhere. You will remember Barnsley, Doncaster probably more than me because I didn't travel as much, but it was known that Barnsley had a lot of bike shops then. In between, you know, Goldthorpe, those areas in between Swinton, you know, all those in between Barnsley and Rotherham and Barnsley and Doncaster, it's all squashed together as we know.
Yeah. But yeah, no,
bike shops.
I remember our Saturdays, you know, there'd be a group of us and we'd meet probably at one of the bike shops in Barnsley, ride through Goldthorpe, DC Cooks, where you got your bike from, into Doncaster to Cusworth's Carnell's, which were trading for quite a long time. Then we'd look back. We tended not to go Sheffield so much. Our runs were Doncaster and Barnsley, but we'd come back through Wath where there was a Harley dealership. So back then, you couldn't go down most streets in South Yorkshire without coming across a bike dealership.
No.
But one of the quite shocking facts, to be fair, when I was looking into a little bit of background before we decided we were going to sit down and have this conversation. Now, today, in 2025, it is not possible to buy a brand new Japanese motorcycle in South Yorkshire.
Yeah, that's an incredible statistic.
Yeah.
You know, and it focuses the mind somewhat. South Yorkshire's not a small county. And it's a conurbation, it's all together.
Huge population.
Yeah, and you know, but perversely, I'd also say that we've got more choice with the Chinese bikes, other brands of, you know, varying quality, but there's quite a lot of decent stuff coming out of Asia now. So much as I appreciate what you're saying, you're right. I do wonder if the Japanese have asked too much of their dealers over the years, possibly pushed them too hard in a declining market, and maybe people have not wanted to, you know, have a dealership on the scale that maybe the Japanese want them to. Maybe there's not had the amount of help. Maybe they didn't want to continue the investment or move to bigger premises. I don't know. But yeah, one thing's for sure. There's now more than ever. There's a lot of smaller companies rather than a few big companies.
It's. I mean, I remember many years ago saying that the industry was going to polarise to big showrooms or small corner shops almost, and I think we're almost going down that route. I mean, you were saying, I think you quoted the statistic that Sheffield's the 7th biggest city in England. Don't know. I'm not going to fact check that, but Manhattan. Royal Enfield dealership in Sheffield is the only place in Sheffield to buy a brand new motorcycle. Yeah.
You know, with the sort of the other side of Sheffield, in the city, but just outside it, you could say not far down the road is Chesterfield and Dronfield, etc., where you can still buy motorcycles. But like I say, it's quite a sobering fact that, you know, there are a few bike shops left, but the, you know, off-road repairs, etc. You know. And the 2 big ones that left last year have got their own reasons. One's still going, Dronfield area. The other one's moved to Barnsley, to Wunwell area. But, you know, they have their own reasons. Some blame the congestion charges. Yeah, I think that's been mooted. And Sheffield's become sort of not the friend of the business in the city. Whether that's you know, meant to happen or just has, I don't know. But, you know, we're left here sort of holding the flag as the last franchise dealer. Which, as I say, is quite strange. Last year was challenging for everybody, as you've alluded to. There's lots of reasons. My boss was into motorhomes. He went to the motorhome show autumn of last year. He's been going for 20 years, and he couldn't believe how it used to be really busy. The last year wasn't so busy. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, that was a leisure industry. He's been going 20 years. You're a queue to get in the motorhomes. Can't sit anywhere to have your dinner. None of that was the case last year. It was quieter. Yeah. And this is another leisure market. So is it just bikes? Is it a wider thing where
wider
people
thing.
have
So
said,
you've experienced over the years, being in the trade as long as you have, a little bit like myself, the decline, and yeah, I'm sure there's been an impact with the economy, the austerity, whatever you want to call it, over the last year or so. But beyond that, what do you think the decline in the industry is down to?
when you love something as much as we do and it's your life, you know, as a motorcyclist it's your life, but if you earn your living from it as well, it's different, you know, because you're earning your living from it, basically. You're paying your mortgage and everything else. So you can sort of, sometimes if you don't look out of your window, you don't necessarily notice what's happening. But it's been quite clear over the last couple of decades that motorcycling, the people that was there in the last boom, if you like, we remember this, working at Carnell, let's just say mid-late 80s to early mid-90s, the majority of the motorcyclists that were buying bikes then that were 30-ish, they're the ones still riding.
Yeah.
And I'd say they account for at least 80% of the current motorcycle public. People coming in is getting less and less, as we've noticed. But obviously we're a certain specific brand, so maybe across the other brands there's a different demographic. Enfield are trying to pitch with some of the bikes to a younger market. That younger market is probably present in other countries or Asia. And you look at the EICMA show last year in Italy, which I recommend everybody should go to. I noticed the pictures and videos I'd seen. Are they just Italians? No, there'll be French, there'll be Swiss, there'll be German people coming. The benchmark or average age, if you want to call that, looked younger than ours.
Right.
It looked younger than ours.
So you think this is a UK specific problem, or?
Not yet, possibly. In some markets, I think motorcycling is more proactive still in Europe. You ride a motorcycle in Europe, they see you easier, they're more used to motorcycles being around them. I don't believe that's as much the case now in the UK. Obviously, weather, Southern Europe is better. There's certainly more motorcycles around there. Our sales are still about 5th to 6th. They're not so bad. But I think the motorcycle seems to have a healthier future in some other countries in Europe.
You've touched on there a point that I was going to raise, in that you're saying that 8% of your customers are 30 or over, which means only 20% are. And that probably flips the figure that it was when we first started, where, you know, 80% would be under 30 and very few over, because people tend to buy bikes, then get married, whereas these days they get married, then buy bikes. I'm guessing those that are coming into it for the first time.
Sure.
What do you think is the reason behind younger people not getting into it?
I think the risk element. I think nowadays people's attitude to things that could be perceived as dangerous, even though we see it another way, exciting, exhilarating, maybe is different. I do believe that most of the younger people, they generally want to keep their phones in their hand. Motorcycling doesn't necessarily allow that. They don't necessarily want to be away from technology, whereas a lot of us see it as an escape from, or a way out, or a stress buster, or whatever. I'm not sure that's the same attitude. When I sell a bike to somebody below even 50, 40, I ask them what the reasons are. Most of them say this motorcycling might have been around their family, but they've never really considered it. Like you just said, they've started a family, they've done those things. And maybe they've questioned themselves, why am I sat in a queue? Why is my commute so fraught and takes so long? And they've decided to try a motorcycle. But when you consider, when the companies I worked for as I was repping, there was a lot of training companies. Every time there seemed to be a legislation change, it became more oppressive or more expensive to ride a motorcycle. Was that meant or not? I'm sure it wasn't meant, but it made it more difficult. And we found some of them training companies, every time there was legislation change, some of them companies closed. And they became less and less. And there's less training companies than ever now, because there's less demand, because it's more prohibitive and more expensive. And so I feel that whatever the country with its safety obsession wants to try and get bikes to the same safety record as cars, which is not possible. Fishing, cycling, walking, there's more fatalities or serious injuries potentially. You know, it depends what you want to look at. I think until people understand that motorcycling, it's an open vehicle, it's not a car with airbags, there will be more fatalities and serious injuries, although that appears to be declining, maybe along with the declining motorcyclist numbers, then it will always have the safety aspect put on it, the pressure put on it.
We're an easy target for government statistics, or reduction
so.
in statistics, aren't we?
I think so.
And as you say, maybe not a deliberate attempt to totally do away with motorcycling, but there are people out there that want to see a reduction in road casualties, and an easy target is motorcycling.
If we were conspiracy theorists, you could say 30 years ago, okay, we can't ban motorcycles. Obviously, we're not going to do that. We're a free country. But we don't like this safety thing. So every time there's a legislation change with training, entry into it, etc., etc., educating the car driver would be a good thing for us as well. But let's say we make that legislation more difficult and more prohibitive, then it dies a natural death over maybe 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's happened. I'm just saying...
But I see that as a danger unless we can encourage new blood into the what do you call it, an activity, a leisure pursuit, into motorcycling, into a lifestyle. Unless we can attract fresh blood, I see that years are limited. Which brings me on to, I suppose, trying to flip it and try and look at a positive. What do you think should be being done by the industry itself or by governments to try and encourage people onto 2 wheels in any shape or form?
I think the industry can only do so much, and we always said they should be more proactive, etc., etc. But there's a static sales base, but I don't think profitability is anything to shout about. So the budgets aren't so big. I don't know which age group will hear the call of motorcycling. It may have to come from a very different angle and be the stress buster, the relaxing. But I still know people that have not got anything to do with motorcycling. They're not against it, but they just think it's dangerous. That's not quite correct. But I think it's the attitude of the younger generation. When I say younger, what do I mean? Let's say 16 to 30. That motorcycling isn't really something. They've got to go out there. They may get wet. They may get cold. They may have to not have the phone on the go for half an hour. To some people, those 3 reasons alone mean they're not going to ride a motorcycle or consider one.
I think the last few generations that are coming through, from an early age, from the day they start school, we're bringing children up to be much more risk averse than they were in our day. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Obviously, we want to protect children from unnecessary harm. Yeah. But the knock-on effect is by the time they're of an age where they're earning their own living and they're looking to go out into the world, they've already got that mindset that this is dangerous, is that dangerous. And the people that are seeking adventure are, in my opinion, an exception. Yeah, whereas in our generation, I think it was more normal.
I think the rebellious side of what we like to do, punk rock was out then. I'm not saying they correlated, but I think danger. Yeah, anti-establishment, whatever, and bikers. We're not like that now. I think sadly we're still seen. I look at the way motorcyclists are portrayed in dramas and series. It's still the guy all in black that's a bit of a rebel, a bit of an outsider, a bit of a loner. Well, that, as you know, that's a very old-fashioned image, but it's the one that the British industry has hung on to. The Europeans aren't like that with it, but
I do see that. I mean, the media definitely has an influence, and you may have seen it. I've definitely seen it. Some of the bike meets and that I got. Sons of Anarchy has a lot to answer for when you see the rise in the number of people wanting to join patch clubs, for want of a better word. But there are positive. I'm not saying that's a negative, but there are, shall we say, other people in the media that maybe I think the industry could use. I mean, we've had the hairy bikers, the 2 fat ladies, the guy, what's it?
Paul Hollywood.
Paul Hollywood. What's the reality TV star? Was it John Wicks or something? What's his name? He's now taken over on the dog. Battersea Dogs Home dog.
Oh, right. Okay.
From
I don't know. Should know.
Yeah. He's riding around on a cruiser. So there are some. These days we talk about influencers.
Well, the Royal Princes are bikers, aren't they?
The Prince, yeah.
But
Do we
Does
talk
anybody
about it?
Yeah, does anybody pick the ball up and run with it?
Yeah.
You know, or just does the popular media just not be interested in it because, hold on, some editor says, well, it's motorcycling. Nobody's going to really be bothered.
Yeah.
Or it's not going to hit the numbers. I mean,
Because of that negative image it's got,
yeah.
they don't want to promote something that might be seen as not being PC these days.
I was in so when I was repping, I've got a few stories from that era. But anyway, I was in a motocross shop in Newcastle. I was stood in the motocross shop, just waiting to see the boss, and a young girl looked totally out of water in this shop. She was only about 20, 22. She was holding a clipboard. She looked a bit nervous. Clearly, she wasn't going to ask for a piston kit for a KTM EXE 125. So I just asked her what she was waiting for, and she said she was working for a production company filming Vera.
Yeah,
apparently a popular ITV.
We watch Vera regularly. Good show. Yeah,
they film it up there quite a lot.
Yeah,
and she was looking for helmet and gear for filming, and straight away I said, "Oh, is it? What is it you want in black stuff?" I was maybe being assumptive, but I'd seen it before. And she said, "Well, yeah, he has a black helmet and black..." She's looking at a clipboard, black helmet, black visor, black this, black that. And I said, "Oh, so he's the rebel, the outsider." Yeah. Quite enthusiastic because I'd somehow guessed what image they're after. Well, I didn't have to guess it. I knew what it was going to be. Yeah. Unless he was a motocross guy with lots of bright colours. It clearly wasn't. It was the stereotypical 1960s,
bad guy on the bike.
70s bad guy. So I did send her to the correct shop, not this motocross shop. And she thanked me. And I thought, okay, well, she's probably ticked that box as a young intern and she's gone back with what she needed. But what she needed for our image wasn't what we needed.
Yes.
But that's where we were at. And I thought, okay, that's been like that for years. Yeah. And so, I don't know. People want to watch these reality TVs with the patch clubs or building the choppers, and Henry Cole, bless him, whatever people think of Henry Cole, he's had self-produced episodes for 13 years now. TV, that's no bad thing.
It's one of the few positive motorcycling shows on the TV. And I concur with what you're saying. Generally, the media plays on the bad boy image, which is attractive. It attracted us in the early days, but as an industry, I think that we could be doing more positive, using positive TV images, influencers, etc. So, so I suppose bringing us round to try and to sum up and bring this little chat to a conclusion at the end of the day. Do you feel there is a future if we want there to be?
Firstly, I hope there is, otherwise I'll not be able to pay my mortgage for the next few years. Secondly, I think, there's a few years in it yet. But there's a lot of exciting bikes around that aren't based on speed and danger. That message needs to be got through. If Henry Cole or somebody like Henry Cole can get on ITV at 8 o'clock, we've cracked it. However, it's fascinating. We've got to look to other countries, not Asia, it's mass market, mass movement. After the Second World War, everybody bought small motorcycles in Italy and Britain because we got mobilised. Yeah. When people got more affluent, they could afford a car. So that was just a transport thing. That's never going to happen again, I don't think. But motorcycling is still a massively important solution to all the queuing. As long as people don't accept that queuing as being normal. Yeah. Maybe they do. Maybe things that we look at through our older eyes and go, that's never right.
People
the 20 cars queuing around McDonald's drive-thru when the restaurant's empty and you can walk in and walk out. But they sit there going, well, this is what you do. Yeah. Well, okay, if that's what you do. So maybe I'm not sure what normal is anymore. But I think the right type of motorcycling, not necessarily motorcycle road racing. A lot of these new customers, I've said to you before, Mark, they aren't into racing and camping and rallies and the sort of the camaraderie we had. They want to buy a motorcycle because they think it looks cool.
Like the gentleman that's just been in, he's looking for something just to potter around on.
That's right. He might ride around on his own. He might go to Matlock occasionally. Does that keep the industry going? I'm not sure. But if there was enough from where it was attractive and the younger market came in, because they're the influential people, the ones in the 30s, they influence other people their age. We don't need much influence at our age because we know motorcycling. Somebody in our family or associated down the line has got a motorcycle. Yeah. So it's there for us if we want to try it. But
So
I am optimistic, and I do feel there's a future. It's going to be difficult. We may have to look at other countries in Europe and areas as to, well, how come it's still more popular there? What's the difference?
So, yeah, I was going to say, almost the same. I said, to conclude, you're saying there's a future, but we're going to have to work at it, and it's going to be hard work.
Maybe outside the box now, and maybe we have to just wonder, we can't do what we've always done. The market's clearly shifting. The public's perception is shifting. Why is it shifting? How can we represent motorcycling?
Yeah.
Not in a way we've done before, probably.
Okay. Seriously, thank you very much for that.
No.
Thank you to Paul and Manhattan for letting us sit down here and have a chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Once again, a big thank you to Steve and Paul at Manhattan Motorcycles for giving up their time and letting me come along and have a chat. Highly recommend them for your parts, servicing, or if you're fancying a new Enfield, yeah, get along, have a chat. I'm sure they'll sort something out for you. Once again, I am the Barnsley Biker, and I'll see you.